Erich Fromm once wrote, "The main condition for the achievement of love is the overcoming of one's narcissism." This observation exposes a truth often ignored in modern life. While genuine love and empathy require moving beyond the self, society increasingly rewards those who remain absorbed within it. We witness this paradox daily. Leaders who dominate conversations, celebrities who flaunt wealth, and influencers who endlessly display their personal lives are elevated to positions of admiration. Their self-promotion is not hidden in shame. It is celebrated as ambition, confidence, and success. Narcissism, defined in psychological research, is not mere vanity. It is a pattern of grandiosity, a constant hunger for admiration, and a striking absence of empathy toward others. Dark psychology explores how such traits allow individuals to influence, manipulate, and even control those around them. Rather than condemning these behaviors, modern society quietly encourages them. The louder, bolder, and more self-focused an individual appears, the more attention they receive. This pattern suggests an uncomfortable truth about the values we unconsciously uphold. Consider how humans instinctively respond to confidence. Studies in social psychology consistently reveal that people are more likely to trust individuals who project dominance, even when there is no evidence to support their competence. This instinct evolved from ancient survival mechanisms. In early groups, following the decisive individual often meant safety in uncertain environments. Today, that instinct persists, but it no longer guarantees safety. It instead elevates individuals skilled at projecting superiority, regardless of their true intentions. The cultural machinery amplifies this effect. Social media platforms function as engines of validation, rewarding self-promotion with likes and shares. Each reward reinforces the behavior, encouraging even more curated displays of perfection. As a result, those who master the art of self-presentation rise quickly, while quieter voices go unheard. This feedback loop convinces many that arrogance is strength, and that relentless self-focus is leadership. This normalization extends into workplaces and personal lives. In corporate environments, narcissistic employees often climb faster because their confidence is mistaken for capability. In public life, audiences interpret shameless self-promotion as charisma rather than insecurity. Even in personal relationships, traits once seen as red flags are now reframed as passion or drive. The boundary between admiration and enablement is gradually erased. Dark psychology provides clarity to this disturbing phenomenon. It does not excuse narcissism, but it reveals why society rewards it. Human attention is biased toward traits that appear powerful and secure. Cultural systems from media to politics exploit this bias and reinforce it. The outcome is a quiet but pervasive celebration of narcissism, shaping leadership, relationships, and collective ideals of success. We applaud dominance over humility, noise over silence, and appearance over substance. In doing so, we unconsciously fuel a cycle that rewards narcissism, allowing it to spread far beyond the individuals who embody it most strongly. This pattern is not rare. It is the very structure of modern admiration. Across cultures, there is a comforting story people are taught from an early age. The story suggests that goodness is always rewarded and wrongdoing is always punished. This belief, sometimes called moral meritocracy, promises that life is fair if you simply work hard and treat others with respect. It offers reassurance that the world operates with justice at its core. Yet when examined through the lens of dark psychology, this belief quickly unravels. Evidence from modern research and historical observation shows that narcissism often thrives while humility struggles to be seen. Narcissism is more than arrogance or vanity. It is a personality pattern marked by grandiosity, a hunger for admiration, and an absence of empathy. These traits, when combined, give individuals an advantage in competitive environments. They claim credit boldly, speak with unshakable confidence, and project an image of control that others instinctively respond to. Dark psychology helps us understand why these behaviors, though destructive, are rewarded rather than punished. The social admiration for strength and dominance often overshadows the quiet value of humility and integrity. The comforting lie persists because it serves a psychological need. People want to believe they live in a just world. This cognitive bias, known as the just world hypothesis, allows individuals to cope with chaos and suffering. It tells us that victims must have done something wrong and winners must have done something right. It is easier to believe this story than to confront the truth that society sometimes elevates those who manipulate and exploit. Studies in social psychology have repeatedly shown that people attribute success to personal virtue, even when that success is rooted in unethical behavior. Consider how this plays out in public life. Leaders who dominate headlines often display traits closely linked to narcissism, yet they are celebrated for their decisiveness. In workplaces, those who speak the loudest or take credit without hesitation are seen as leaders, while those who quietly contribute are overlooked. In entertainment, personalities who thrive on self-promotion rise faster than those who focus on craft alone. The belief in moral meritocracy blinds people to the mechanics of admiration, leading them to confuse visibility with value. Philosophy offers a deeper critique of this dynamic. Thinkers such as Friedrich Nietzsche warned that society often venerates power regardless of morality. Human beings are drawn to displays of strength because they signal survival and security. In this sense, the cultural reward of narcissism is not accidental. It is rooted in deep evolutionary and existential impulses that prioritize dominance over virtue. This insight reveals why moral meritocracy is not just false, but actively misleading. It creates expectations that life does not meet and fosters resentment when humility fails to bring reward. The tension between what people believe and what they observe creates dissonance. When someone humble is overlooked and someone arrogant is celebrated, the illusion begins to crack. Many struggle to reconcile the belief that goodness is rewarded with the reality that narcissism often prospers. This dissonance can lead to cynicism, or more dangerously, to imitation. Some begin to adopt narcissistic behaviors themselves, reasoning that it is the only way to survive in an environment that rewards self-focus over collective good. The comforting lie of moral meritocracy shields people from confronting uncomfortable truths about society. Yet by examining this lie through the lens of dark psychology, we see the structures that allow narcissism to flourish. Understanding this dynamic does not necessarily solve it, but it strips away illusions and forces us to question the very foundation of what we celebrate in others. The truth is unsettling, but it is also liberating, because only by naming the pattern can we begin to see it clearly. Narcissism possesses a magnetic pull that extends beyond superficial admiration. It is not limited to envy of material wealth or physical appearance. It is rooted in psychological mechanisms that cause people to gravitate toward traits they perceive as strength. Dark psychology examines this attraction with precision, revealing how narcissistic traits exploit deep biases in human perception and decision-making. To understand why society rewards narcissism, we must first examine why people feel drawn to it, often without conscious awareness. The first element of this magnetism lies in charisma. Narcissistic individuals are skilled at crafting an image that appears confident and desirable. They maintain strong eye contact, speak with authority, and move through social environments as though they belong at the center of them. These signals create an illusion of competence that others interpret as leadership. Studies in social psychology have confirmed that confidence, even when unfounded, is frequently mistaken for expertise. This misinterpretation benefits narcissists in competitive environments, allowing them to rise faster than peers who may be equally or more capable but less assertive. The second element is dominance. Narcissists often display assertiveness that others mistake for decisiveness. In group settings, they are willing to speak first, take control, and position themselves as indispensable. This behavior triggers an instinctive response in observers. Throughout human history, groups have relied on dominant figures for direction, and survival during crises. Although modern environments rarely involve physical danger, the same evolutionary instincts remain. When someone appears certain and unshaken, people feel drawn to follow, even if that certainty masks recklessness or manipulation. Another factor is the seductive quality of self-assured narratives. Narcissists excel at storytelling in ways that center themselves as heroes or visionaries. They highlight personal triumphs while downplaying failures, creating an aura of invincibility. Audiences, hungry for inspiration, often suspend skepticism in favor of the emotional satisfaction that these narratives provide. The admiration that follows strengthens the narcissist's belief in their superiority and encourages even bolder displays of self-importance. This cycle reinforces both individual behavior and societal reward systems. Cultural reinforcement magnifies this psychological magnetism. Media platforms designed to prioritize engagement reward content that provokes strong emotional responses. Narcissistic personalities, with their dramatic self-presentation and polarizing statements, thrive in this environment. Their content travels faster, attracts more attention, and dominates public discourse. As a result, society becomes increasingly accustomed to equating visibility with value. The more someone is seen, the more they are believed to matter. Philosophical analysis adds another dimension to this understanding. The human tendency to admire appearances has been examined for centuries. From Plato's allegories to modern existential thought, philosophers have warned of humanity's preference for shadows over substance. Narcissistic individuals embody this preference, projecting idealized images that others accept at face value. The danger lies in mistaking projection for reality, admiration for truth, and dominance for morality. This psychological magnetism does not merely elevate individuals, it reshapes collective ideals. When society repeatedly rewards narcissism, the definition of success shifts. Humility is reframed as weakness. Compassion is overshadowed by ambition. Over time, people internalize these distorted values and begin to emulate them. The magnetic pull of narcissism becomes not just a social phenomenon, but a cultural norm, quietly guiding behavior and shaping aspirations across generations. The draw toward narcissistic personalities is not accidental, nor is it rare. It is the predictable outcome of biases deeply rooted in human psychology and amplified by modern culture. Understanding this attraction is essential because it reveals how easily admiration can be manipulated and how subtly society participates in the elevation of traits that ultimately harm collective well-being. Modern society has built powerful cultural systems that transform narcissistic behavior into something profitable and aspirational. These systems do not merely tolerate self-promotion and dominance, they actively incentivize it. When we look closely at media, technology, and corporate environments, the mechanisms become clear. Dark psychology explains why these structures align so well with narcissistic tendencies, and why individuals who master self-presentation often rise to prominence, regardless of substance or integrity. One of the most obvious cultural machines is social media. Platforms are designed to amplify content that sparks immediate emotional reactions. Posts that display confidence, luxury, or bold personal opinions generate more engagement than modest or nuanced communication. Narcissistic personalities instinctively excel in this environment. Their curated images and exaggerated narratives align perfectly with algorithms that prioritize attention over authenticity. Each like, share, and comment functions as a micro-reward, encouraging more extreme behavior and validating inflated self-importance. Over time, audiences are conditioned to equate constant visibility with success, normalizing narcissistic self-display as a cultural standard. Celebrity culture reinforces this cycle. Public fascination with fame is not new, but modern media has accelerated it. The constant exposure to personalities who flaunt wealth, power, and self-centered confidence creates aspirational models for viewers. People begin to believe that being seen, rather than being substantive, is the ultimate achievement. Dark psychology highlights the danger of this phenomenon. By rewarding narcissistic archetypes, culture unintentionally teaches that arrogance is admirable and that empathy or humility are secondary traits. Corporate environments further entrench this reward system. In competitive workplaces, those who self-promote often appear more competent than equally capable, but quieter colleagues. Narcissistic employees claim credit for group efforts, speak with authority in meetings, and present themselves as indispensable to leadership. Research in organizational psychology shows that such traits can accelerate promotions and influence career trajectories. Humble individuals, despite significant contributions, are frequently overlooked. The structure itself rewards those willing to dominate, rather than collaborate. The entertainment industry provides another clear example. Reality television, viral internet personalities, and influencer marketing campaigns thrive on spectacle. Outrage, self-aggrandizement, and polarizing statements draw audiences in ways that subtlety never could. The cultural machine feeds off this dynamic, turning narcissistic behavior into a product that can be monetized. The louder the personality, the larger the following, and the greater the reward. Philosophical critiques of this trend echo throughout history. Thinkers have long warned that societies which prioritize image over virtue risk moral decay. The modern celebration of narcissism mirrors these warnings with uncanny precision. When admiration is determined by appearances and performance, truth becomes secondary. The individual who can project the most compelling illusion becomes the one society elevates. The danger of these cultural machines lies not only in their power to elevate narcissists, but also in their ability to reshape values. As audiences consume and replicate these patterns, the threshold for what is considered normal shifts. Behaviors once recognized as manipulative or self-absorbed become aspirational goals. The cycle reinforces itself with each generation, as younger audiences grow up immersed in environments that glorify self-centered ambition. Understanding this cultural reward system is essential. It reveals that narcissism does not thrive in isolation, but within carefully constructed environments that magnify and celebrate it. These machines, built to entertain, inform, and connect, inadvertently normalize traits that erode empathy and community. The result is a society where the loudest voices dominate, the most self-promoting individuals ascend, and the quiet virtues of humility and cooperation are increasingly left in the shadows. Throughout history, individuals with narcissistic traits have repeatedly risen to positions of immense influence. This pattern is not an anomaly, but a recurring phenomenon that illustrates how societies, regardless of era or culture, have rewarded those who project dominance and certainty. Dark psychology provides a framework to understand why these figures were elevated and why their charisma often overshadowed their flaws. Examining historical archetypes reveals that the admiration of narcissism is woven into the very fabric of human civilization. Ancient rulers offer some of the earliest examples. Figures such as Julius Caesar and Alexander the Great displayed extraordinary ambition and self-belief. Their military campaigns were not merely quests for territory, but expressions of personal legacy. They cultivated public images that portrayed them as divinely favored, heroic, and destined for greatness. The societies they led responded to these projections with reverence. Even as their decisions brought immense suffering, their grand narratives of conquest and destiny secured loyalty and admiration. The pattern is clear. The boldest visionaries, even when reckless, were celebrated over cautious leaders who prioritized collective well-being. The Middle Ages provide another lens into this archetype. Monarchs and emperors of this era often justified absolute power through divine right, positioning themselves as chosen by higher forces. Their displays of wealth, opulence, and authority reinforced their superiority in the public imagination. Dark psychology helps explain this dynamic. By amplifying their own perceived importance, these leaders suppressed dissent and cultivated dependence. The populace admired their strength, mistaking fear and awe for respect. The pattern continued into modern history. Political leaders in the 20th century, including authoritarian figures whose names remain synonymous with manipulation and control, demonstrated the same narcissistic traits. They projected confidence, spoke in absolutes, and offered visions of national glory. Crowds responded with fervor, often ignoring or rationalizing moral compromises. The magnetic pull of their certainty overshadowed the devastating consequences of their actions. Philosophers observing these eras noted how human beings are drawn to power displays, even when it leads to collective harm. This archetype is not limited to politics. Cultural icons in art, music, and entertainment have also embodied narcissistic traits that elevated them beyond their peers. Their public personas exuded self-importance and creative dominance. Audiences mistook their defiance of norms for genius, rewarding them with admiration and influence. The cycle persisted because societies repeatedly conflate bold individuality with greatness, overlooking the harm that unchecked ego can inflict on communities and individuals. The recurrence of these narcissistic archetypes raises an uncomfortable truth. Human societies across centuries have consistently rewarded individuals who present themselves as larger than life. The admiration is not accidental. It arises from deep psychological biases towards strength, certainty, and spectacle. Dark psychology exposes the mechanics behind this bias, showing how charisma can mask manipulation and how dominance can be mistaken for destiny. Historical patterns also reveal a sobering insight. Societies rarely recognize the cost of rewarding narcissism until the damage is already done. The suffering of those who fall victim to exploitation is often acknowledged only in hindsight. By then, the narrative of greatness has already been cemented, and the individual's legacy is celebrated despite their destructive influence. This persistent cycle highlights how vulnerable human admiration is to psychological manipulation, and how easily history can glorify the very traits that undermine collective well-being. Rewarding narcissism does not come without consequence. While society may celebrate individuals who project confidence and dominance, the hidden costs of this admiration quietly accumulate over time. These costs are not abstract or distant. They affect workplaces, relationships, communities, and even the psychological stability of entire generations. Dark psychology provides a lens to understand how these consequences unfold and why they are often minimized or overlooked by the very people who suffer the most. One of the most immediate costs is the erosion of empathy within social environments. Narcissistic individuals thrive on self-interest, and when their behavior is rewarded, it subtly teaches others to adopt similar priorities. Over time, collaborative values decline, and competitive self-promotion becomes the norm. Workplaces once built on trust transform into arenas of personal advancement. Relationships that should provide support turn into power struggles where admiration is constantly negotiated. This cultural shift has been documented in studies linking rising narcissistic traits to declines in communal concern and mutual aid. Another cost lies in the psychological burden placed on those who do not conform to narcissistic norms. Individuals who value humility or quiet competence often find themselves overlooked or dismissed. They may experience feelings of inadequacy, questioning whether their refusal to self-promote makes them invisible. This leads to widespread dissatisfaction and burnout, especially in environments where recognition is tied to visibility rather than genuine contribution. Research on social comparison demonstrates that constant exposure to exaggerated self-presentation fosters envy and low self-esteem among observers, intensifying cycles of insecurity. The societal impact extends further when narcissistic individuals reach leadership positions. Decision-making rooted in personal glory rather than collective welfare often leads to reckless policies and exploitation. The harm is not confined to those directly under their authority. It ripples outward, affecting entire communities and sometimes nations. Historical patterns show that societies frequently recognize this harm only after significant damage has been done. Yet despite the lessons of history, the cycle continues, reinforced by cultural admiration for decisive personalities. Dark psychology also highlights the subtle emotional toll that comes from constant exposure to narcissistic ideals. The glorification of self-importance encourages people to measure worth through external validation rather than internal values. This creates a culture of endless striving, where satisfaction is perpetually deferred and identity is fragile. Social media amplifies this instability by rewarding the most dramatic and self-focused behaviors. Individuals internalize these rewards, reshaping their own self-image to align with what gains attention, often at the expense of authenticity and well-being. The cost is not only personal but collective. When narcissism is normalized, trust within communities erodes. People become skeptical of altruism, questioning the motives behind every act of generosity. Public discourse grows more polarized as individuals compete for recognition rather than understanding. This environment fosters cynicism, making cooperation and collective problem-solving increasingly difficult. Over time, the very fabric of social cohesion weakens, replaced by a culture where dominance is celebrated and vulnerability is dismissed. Perhaps the most disturbing cost is how invisible it often remains. People notice the rewards given to narcissistic figures, but rarely calculate the damage left in their wake. The harm accumulates quietly, manifesting in mental health crises, broken relationships, and disillusionment with institutions. By the time society confronts these consequences, the patterns are already deeply ingrained. Dark psychology forces us to face this uncomfortable truth. The rewards we give to narcissism come with a price we continue to pay without acknowledgement, a price that shapes the world more than we dare admit. The admiration and elevation of narcissistic individuals are not random events. They are products of an intricate reward system rooted in human psychology and amplified by societal structures. Dark psychology seeks to expose these mechanisms, showing how manipulation, dominance, and charisma create predictable responses in those who observe and follow. By understanding these hidden processes, it becomes clear why narcissism thrives even in environments that claim to value morality and fairness. At the core of this reward system is the human tendency to equate confidence with competence. People instinctively trust individuals who appear certain of themselves, even when that certainty lacks substance. This cognitive bias is deeply ingrained, a remnant of evolutionary survival strategies where following the most decisive figure increased group cohesion during crises. Narcissists exploit this bias by projecting absolute certainty and control. In doing so, they bypass rational evaluation and trigger admiration that feels instinctive rather than deliberate. Another mechanism lies in the way narcissistic individuals manipulate emotional responses. Techniques such as gaslighting and selective charm create confusion and dependency. A narcissist can alternate between charm and criticism to maintain dominance over others. Dark psychology explains how this intermittent reinforcement strengthens attachment. People become more invested in seeking approval from those who withhold it. This dynamic is visible not only in personal relationships but also in workplaces and public life, where audiences become captivated by figures who oscillate between praise and provocation. Cultural and technological factors intensify this hidden reward system. Social media platforms are structured to prioritize content that provokes strong emotional reactions. Narcissistic personalities excel in this environment, using provocative statements, exaggerated self-presentation, and carefully staged images to capture attention. Each interaction, a like, a comment, a share, acts as a micro-reward, reinforcing behaviors that attract visibility. Over time, these platforms normalize narcissistic expression, making it appear not only acceptable but aspirational. Philosophical insights deepen the understanding of this system. Thinkers have long debated whether power corrupts or merely reveals character. Within the context of dark psychology, power and reward are inseparable. Society provides narcissists with platforms and recognition precisely because their traits align with collective desires for leadership, spectacle, and certainty. The moral implications are troubling. When admiration is shaped more by projection than by substance, the line between hero and manipulator becomes dangerously thin. The reward system does more than elevate narcissistic individuals. It reshapes cultural values. As societies repeatedly celebrate traits such as dominance and self-importance, humility and empathy recede from public ideals. Success becomes defined not by contribution but by visibility. Over generations, these patterns become self-perpetuating, with each new wave of aspirants adopting narcissistic behaviors as the path to recognition. This is not accidental. It is the predictable outcome of a system that prioritizes attention over authenticity. Understanding this hidden system forces a difficult realization. Narcissism does not simply emerge from individual flaws. It thrives because human psychology and cultural design actively reinforce it. The applause given to those who dominate is not neutral. It is an active part of the cycle that sustains their power. The cost of this cycle, as history shows, is rarely recognized until it is too late. Narcissism is not confined to those at the top of social hierarchies. When society rewards narcissistic behavior, others begin to imitate it, consciously or unconsciously. This imitation is not merely a matter of choice, but a psychological adaptation to environments where self-promotion and dominance are prerequisites for recognition. Dark psychology explains why this contagion occurs and how it reshapes individual identity and collective behavior across generations. The first driver of imitation is survival. In competitive social and professional settings, individuals quickly learn which traits lead to advancement. When they observe that those who speak the loudest and project absolute certainty are rewarded, they begin to adjust their own behavior. Even those who dislike arrogance may find themselves exaggerating achievements or adopting self-centered narratives, simply to remain visible. Over time, these behaviors become normalized, blurring the line between authentic confidence and learned narcissism. Social comparison plays a crucial role in this process. Research in psychology shows that people constantly evaluate themselves against others in their environment. When narcissistic individuals dominate attention, others experience pressure to match their level of self-presentation to avoid being overlooked. This creates a cycle where admiration fuels competition, and competition fuels further displays of narcissism. Social media accelerates this cycle by exposing individuals to curated images of perfection and success, making ordinary lives feel inadequate in comparison. Cultural influences intensify the spread. In societies where fame and personal branding are celebrated, narcissistic traits are marketed as desirable qualities rather than warning signs. Television personalities, influencers, and corporate figures become models of aspiration. Their lifestyles, broadcast and praised, redefine what people consider normal or admirable. Audiences begin to internalize these ideals, often without realizing it. The pursuit of validation becomes a cultural norm, subtly shifting personal values towards self-focus and away from communal concern. Philosophical critiques of this phenomenon highlight its moral implications. When imitation of narcissism becomes widespread, society risks losing sight of virtues such as empathy and humility. What once distinguished the narcissist from the average person begins to erode, creating a culture where self-absorption is not exceptional, but expected. This shift raises uncomfortable questions about authenticity and moral integrity. If everyone performs for validation, can genuine character still be recognized or valued? The psychological cost of this imitation is profound. Constant self-presentation leads to anxiety, burnout, and identity confusion. People may struggle to distinguish their authentic selves from the persona they project to gain approval. The result is an environment where relationships become transactional, built on admiration rather than mutual understanding. As more individuals adopt these behaviors, the collective reward system for narcissism grows stronger, reinforcing the very traits that initiated the cycle. Dark psychology exposes this imitation as both symptom and cause. It begins as a response to environments that reward narcissism, but ultimately perpetuates those environments. the cycle becomes self-sustaining, leaving little room for humility or quiet integrity to thrive. This is why narcissism spreads, not only among leaders and celebrities, but also among ordinary individuals navigating everyday life. The imitation of narcissism, once rare, becomes an invisible norm that defines modern social interaction. Society's admiration of narcissism is not an isolated mistake, but a recurring pattern woven through history, culture, and human psychology. From ancient rulers who claimed divine right to modern influencers who thrive on curated self-presentation, the reward for self-absorption has been consistent. Dark psychology reveals that this reward system is not accidental. It is sustained by deep biases toward confidence and dominance, amplified by cultural machines that prize visibility over virtue. The result is a world where narcissism does not simply survive, but flourishes, quietly shaping how people define success and power. The reckoning lies in what this pattern costs. When society elevates those who lack empathy, it gradually normalizes behavior that undermines trust and erodes community. People begin to measure worth, not by contribution but by recognition. Authenticity is replaced with performance, and compassion is sidelined in favor of ambition. The consequences manifest in personal relationships, workplaces, and even in the broader moral fabric of cultures. As narcissistic ideals spread, those who resist them are left questioning whether integrity has any place in a world that celebrates self-promotion. This cycle is difficult to break because it appeals to fundamental human instincts. People crave leadership, certainty, and stories of greatness, even when those stories are exaggerated or false. Narcissistic individuals provide these narratives with precision, offering visions that feel inspiring while concealing the cost beneath them. Audiences conditioned to equate charisma with competence continue to reward the very traits that destabilize their communities. The paradox is unsettling. The more society seeks guidance, the more it elevates individuals whose primary loyalty is to themselves. Understanding this cycle does not end. It recognizing the mechanisms of dark psychology offers clarity, but not immunity. The bias toward admiration is powerful, and cultural reinforcement ensures that narcissistic behavior remains visible and alluring, yet awareness can plant doubt. It forces people to question the ideals they consume and the figures they celebrate. This doubt, though uncomfortable, is the beginning of a more honest evaluation of what is truly valuable. The reckoning remains unfinished, because no single revelation can undo centuries of conditioning. Breaking the cycle requires more than identifying narcissism. It requires challenging the systems that reward it and reshaping the values that define admiration. That challenge is daunting, and it is unlikely to happen quickly. But it begins with seeing the pattern for what it is, a quiet agreement between human psychology and cultural design that elevates self-importance while dismissing humility. The future of this dynamic is uncertain. Narcissism may continue to evolve alongside technology and culture, finding new ways to captivate and control, or awareness may grow strong enough to shift collective priorities toward empathy and integrity. For now, society stands at a threshold, caught between the comfort of admiration and the discomfort of truth. The decision to continue rewarding narcissism or to confront it will shape more than individual lives. It will shape the moral direction of entire generations. If what you have heard today unsettled you or opened your eyes to patterns you have always felt but never named, share this with someone who might need to hear it too. Let them see how much of what we call success hides a darker truth beneath the surface. Leave a comment with your thoughts on where you see narcissism being rewarded around you. Like this video if it made you think, and subscribe if you want to keep uncovering the deeper layers of human behavior and the quiet forces shaping society. The next chapters will only take us further into the shadows we rarely acknowledge.